Episode 27.
My experience at Dun & Bradstreet, I've been there, I've done that. I've called on agencies. I've, carried the bag and tried to successfully navigate the maze just as everyone else is trying to do. And I have sold products. I've sold services. So I've been there, done that. It's not just I've always been a consultant. I did come from, I wore the shoes, let's say, that my customers currently wear.
Welcome to the Govcon Giants podcast, federal contracting for people on the outside looking in. If you are here to learn how to win a piece of the pie without getting your face smashed in, then you've tuned in to the right place. Now, the giant that not only walks the walk, but talks the talk, your host, Eric Coffie.
Today's guest has been assisting small businesses navigate the U.S. government marketplace for nearly 2 decades. JSchaus Associates is synonymous with government contracting. For the past 15 years, she has provided support, marketing, business development services for U.S. federal government contractors. She has nearly 250 videos on YouTube and has been featured or presented in dozens of magazines, including Wall Street Journal, Forbes, CNN, Success, Entrepreneur, Fox News, Washington Post, and Government Product News. JSchaus runs a specialized consulting firm in downtown Washington, D.C., helping federal government contractors navigate the competitive and complex procurement system. With over 20 years of government contracting experience, ranging from marketing and sales to completing proposals for contract vehicles, Ms. Schaus built the business on the needs of the marketplace. Customers range in size and offering, including products, services, and software firms. No other commercial website offers the depth and breadth and complementary government contracting content as the JSchaus platform. In this interview today, we discuss GSA, her experience helping private sector companies come into the government arena, her strategies and best practices for winning contracts. I want to welcome to the show today's giant, JSchaus.
Thank you so much, Eric. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Yes, and like we were talking about in the very beginning, you were requested by one of our listeners, so I'm happy to have you on the show finally.
Super. Well, thanks to you and thanks to all your listeners, that person, and everyone else that's out there who is either in government contracting or aspires to be.
Right. So with that said, why don't you tell us, how did you get involved in government contracting? When did that first begin?
Sure. A long time ago, about 20 years ago, I was working for Dun & Bradstreet in their Baltimore office, and I was writing credit reports on companies, anything from manufacturers to professional services companies, and got recruited to come over to Dun & Bradstreet's government division. And that was a pretty small office. We probably had about 10 to 12 people and focused on state, local, and primarily federal government contracting. So we were selling data subscriptions to contracting officers that would go into the Dun & Bradstreet database and search for companies to make sure that they had the financial strength to maintain the terms and conditions of the contract. We also sold to investigative agencies. So we sold to the CIA, NSA, FinCEN, which is part of Treasury, and they would try to uncover money laundering scams. And so data was big back then. And obviously data has grown in popularity over the years and obviously has more value than oil and gold put together. But that was my first foray into government contracting.
Yeah, it sounds like much hasn't changed with that data being sold and shared amongst people around the world. How do you know, and maybe you don't know this, so how did they uncover like money laundering based on the data? Were they looking for patterns or
they looked at patterns, they looked at common ownership, financial statements, they would do data modeling based on some of the numbers, number of employees, physical location. So it wasn't just the DMB database that was used. They obviously had subscriptions to other data providers.
Okay. And then after that, you consulted with a few international companies?
Correct. Yep. And I always bring these companies into the mix in my present situation. One was a Chinese company that sold a 3D panoramic software service, and another was a Dutch company that had a database of what every country's passports and currency looked like. That was a subscription. But the reason I bring the Chinese company up is because we sold that to federal law enforcement as well as state and local police departments. It was a crime scene virtual tour. And so you can sell Chinese products and services directly to the U.S. government, but when you get into, for example, GSA schedules, it becomes a different story. There's some other hoops that you have to jump through. So I always use that as an example because most of our business right now is focused on helping companies get onto the GSA schedule.
Yeah. So my business starts off my roots are in construction, and the whole Chinese made in China thing was really big for us in contractors in construction. They would actually come on base, and if you had like boxes of screws or something, they would confiscate them and take them off site.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, that was a big, it's interesting that you brought that up. That's a great example story because we really had a tough time with that. And considering also just a lot of the smaller parts and components, it's just difficult to find them made in America for us.
Right,
So
right.
We always had a challenge with that.
Exactly.
So that company, you said they sold crime scene virtual tours.
Correct. So it was just a software program, very similar or comparable to what real estate companies started doing a couple of years ago. You could do a virtual tour if you click on a room and you see the entire living room, and you can pan up and pan down and all that. Same as like the hotel industry.
Yeah. Okay. Now I know what you're talking about. That makes sense. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. But you were ahead of your time though with that, right?
Yeah, and same thing with the data at Dun & Bradstreet. So maybe I just need to stick around with some of these a little bit longer. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, you were way ahead on that stuff. I mean, when was that Chinese company? What year was that?
That was probably like 2002, 3, 4, something around there. Yeah.
Imagine.
Yeah. I know.
I mean, no, I'm thinking about all the, like now the artificial intelligence and the 3D glasses and all that stuff. You were right there.
I was there. Trailblazer.
That's right. No, but it's interesting. I guess when you're in this marketplace, right, people approach you all the time, and that's how you get invited or involved in some of these really unique programs, opportunities.
Right.
And we could talk about Go ahead.
And I guess the good thing with those, and also my experience at Dun & Bradstreet, I've been there, I've done that, I've called on agencies, I've carried the bag and tried to successfully navigate the maze just as everyone else is trying to do. And I have sold products, I've sold services, so I've been there, done that. It's not just I've always been a consultant. I did come from, I wore the shoes, let's say, that my customers currently wear.
Is it from Dun & Bradstreet where you first got your entrance into the GSA schedules?
Correct. Yep. Okay. We had some customers that wanted to buy the subscription services through the schedule, and that's kind of where I basically learned, we'll say, OJT, on the job training on GSA schedules and everything that was involved and required to get on, which back then it was much easier.
Okay, than it is today.
Yeah, back then you'd have a nice little lady in Texas that would call you and say, "Oh, sweetie, can you refax page 3?" And we came through kind of crooked, and you'd refax it, maybe later that day or whatever, and everything would be fine. These days they can't read something, or something's missing. You're not going to have a sweet person from Texas calling you. It's you really got to get it right the first time.
Right. Wow. And obviously that's your expertise. So we definitely want to talk about that later on. So let's talk about, so from some of my previous podcast guests, SB Award winners, they discuss the importance of having a marketing plan and a business development plan as the key to success in the federal marketplace. Do you agree or disagree with that strategy?
I not only agree, but I agree 510% if I can. And whether it's a small business or a large business, you really have to have a customized marketing plan. It really has to be specific based on, what is it you do and what do you do well? And that's not, I'm an 8A and I do 8A well. It's, I'm a construction business, or I'm IT professional services and we do cloud migration, like very, very specific. What do you do? And then basically there's so much publicly available content on FPDS, on calc.gsa.gov, on FedBizOps, on USA Spending, and all the other public websites that you can then reverse engineer to figure out which agencies and departments are buying your products and services. How much do they buy? How do they purchase? Is it going through sole source? Is it set aside? Is it going through a GSA schedule? And who are the buyers? Who are the top departments? And you can then navigate the system based on all that data that's out there.
Can you give us an example of what a business development plan looks like in terms of mailers, emails, phone calls, from your experience?
Sure. BD plan, I mean, if we're talking more of like the marketing piece, there's so many different avenues. LinkedIn is supposedly has about 2 million federal government, we'll say direct employees.
Wow.
So those folks are on there. And if in the event most of your audience is small business, then perhaps they're taking a dual approach, meaning partially spending some of their efforts going direct to the government and then partially going direct to the primes, the large businesses, and trying to become a subcontractor to them. Both require a lot of effort, but you can get all of that information on all of these websites that I just mentioned, contact information. And so again, to answer your question on the marketing, LinkedIn, there's federal news, radio, you can, do podcasts, you can send out mailers, a customized capability statement, sponsorships at events, joining networking events, associations, conferences. There's ways to market yourself and get in front of the influencers and buyers.
Okay. And no, you're right. I agree 100% with everything that you've said, because most all the information is out there, publicly available. People just have to take the time to go out and get the information and actually implement the strategies. So it's just one of those things that, it's tossed around, and I'm fanatic about pushing that. It's, networking. But it was interesting. One of my guests also said is delivering excellence. So when you get that contract and you get that opportunity to deliver excellence to that client and serve them really well. Which
absolutely. And that's why.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, and that's one of the takeaways that she said, Eric. That's how she built her pipeline within the organization. Once she got an opportunity, she delivered excellence, and then that referred to the next opportunity and the next opportunity and so forth.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, more than 100%. You want to do what you do and do it well and be known as the best in the field. And that way you can start commanding higher rates. You can, at year 2, get a rate increase for the services that you're providing. And there's going to be no question that, hey, you did a great job. There are contractors that will lose contracts because they are not performing well. So you certainly don't want that reputation. Don't blow your chance once you get in there, whether it's direct with the government or even as a sub to the prime.
Okay. If do you have a few questions maybe that you could discuss if I were to speak to a contracting officer, like the kind of questions I should be asking them?
Sure. So contracting officer, I'm not sure if that's really for a sales rep to be. Contracting officer is really the person that's going to be striking the pen to the paper with, here's how we're going to purchase. It's going to be, GSA Schedule, or we're going to go simplified acquisition or sole source, or we're going to use OTA or whatever. Small businesses should really be targeting, if you're going direct, you're going to be talking to potentially the OSDBUs, the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. Those are your small business advocates within every agency. You're going to be talking to the program managers. You're going to be talking to the end users and other influencers within the agency that have some sort of say in the procurement. So the questions I'll say that you do not want to ask, you don't want to ask them what their mission statement is. You don't want to ask them if you're an 8A, like how they did on their 8A awards last year. Don't ask them any information that you can easily find online. If you're an IT professional services company, you don't want to ask them how much did you spend in IT professional services last year. You can get that information yourself. You should go in there with that data. And you should look at their acquisition forecast and say, oh, I see that you guys are getting ready to do a cloud migration in March of 2020. And it looks like the incumbent is XYZ company. I see that XYZ used to be a small business, but they just got acquired by, I don't know, throw in a large prime. Like going with something specific that you want to bid on, a specific opportunity. So target the opportunity, don't target the agency. Be very, very specific in what you do.
Nice. I like that one. I like that. And you mentioned 8A. I know that's one of your areas of expertise where you help firms get certified in 8A programs. On the 8A program, why do you believe that so many firms do not maximize the potential of the program?
I love this question, and we did a webinar on this.
Okay.
Everything in life is timing. Whether it's dating, whether it's it's relationships, business, personal. It all comes down to timing. So, in my opinion, we believe that too many companies have pulled the trigger way too soon on the 8A program. They pull the trigger, they get the certification, they think their phone is going to ring off the hook, or they think suddenly they've got this great certification that is going to make them more attractive. Yes, it makes you more attractive, but you and, millions of other companies. So you really need to have something other than just being 8A. You really need to lead with your capabilities and not your checkbox, meaning your 8A, your hub zone, your veteran-owned, your SDVO, your Native American, whatever it is. You really need to have something that you're bringing to the table. What is your service? What do you do? And what do you do well? So too many companies get into the 8A program. They pull the trigger. By year 1, year 2, they're still figuring out what all the government acronyms mean. They're still building relationships. By year 3, 4, or 5, they finally kind of maybe hit their stride. And that should be 3, 4, or 5, meaning year 3, 4, or 5. You should be looking for partners that are just getting ready to enter the program that you would then be handing the baton back to once you graduate. So if you think of it as the bell curve, you enter the program, you should really be ramping up, and that the day you get that certification, you should have some pending contracts. You should have a pipeline that then you should be pulling the trigger on the 8A program because of factual information that's in your pipeline.
Right.
Meaning you've talked to some either large businesses that want to work with you because of what you do, and oh, by the way, you would potentially be an 8A or the government. And then so that way, when you pull the trigger, you do have contracts that are, again, in your pipeline. And then as you start getting close to the closeout, so year 6, 7, 8, 9, you're kind of maximizing those, and you've built relationships with new entrants into the program where you can then both benefit. Because then so many companies fail once they graduate. They graduate, and then suddenly they have no idea how to win business without being 8A. So a lot of, I don't know what the numbers are, but I would guess it's more than half.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Probably fail. So you need diversification.
I've heard that, and a couple of interesting points that you made. One is having contracts immediately once you receive the 8A. I did have a guest that happened to her, but then I've also had the opposite, which is where the person 2, 3, 4 years in. I actually had someone that said they were 7 years without a single 8A contract. 7 years without a single 8A contract. Wow.
Right.
And but do you? And we know it's I would agree with you 100%. Actually, 200% on the timing situation. But why? So why are so many companies jumping in then? If we're all saying the same thing, who is advising them or giving them that recommendation to go get 8A? Where are they getting that information from?
Perhaps consulting companies that mask themselves as consulting companies versus really taking the best interest of the customer. Okay. Or companies just make the decision on their own because they're throwing a Hail Mary and they say, hey, we haven't done anything. We've been trying to target this government business. Well, let's try the 8A. And again, it doesn't work like that. You really need to have a custom business development, a marketing plan, and then get your certifications, your contract vehicles based on who your potential customers are and what you're, start having the conversations with the buyers, with the government, with the primes, with potential partners. And if 8A comes up, then yes, you should have a couple folks in your pipeline that want to purchase from you because of A, your capabilities, but then B, the 8A. Right. Having the build it and they will come does not always work.
No, I agree. So let's talk about your organization, JSchaus Associates. Sure. Tell us about your organization. When did you form it? How long has it been around? You can tell us about your services.
Sure. So like I said, I started out working for big corporate America, Dun & Bradstreet. At that time, they were publicly traded. And obviously, everybody knows the importance of the DUNS number, which I believe is going to be phased out. And then I worked for some other smaller companies, was more or less a consultant to them, and got to a point where I had enough knowledge as well as a pipeline full of opportunities to do some some more consulting that was starting to grow. But I also then, at that point had enough knowledge about government contracting that I felt that I could give sage advice to customers. And I built up, we'll say, a referral network of other sole proprietors and other folks in the government contracting industry that I could refer business to that was out of my area, and they would then in turn send stuff over to us. So we've been around since about 2004, and we've worked with clients including some big guys like Chevron and Segway and Apt Associates, and trying to think who else. There's a whole host of large, small, and Brother Printer, and then plenty of still small veteran-owned, HubZone, 8A, women-owned, and all the rest.
Okay. You guys do proposal and grant writing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so primarily proposals. We do have a grant writer, and I'd say that's, we get a request for grants maybe twice a year. So it's certainly not a big area of expertise, or it's an area of expertise, but it's primarily proposals.
Okay. Proposals, GSA Schedule.
Correct, GSA Schedule, and then we'll help with pricing as well. So anyone that usually the services, professional services, hourly rates, maybe there were some lobbying efforts to kind of some of D&B's competitors didn't want them to be the only company out there that was providing this number. So I'm not sure if that's accurate, but it was. I think everybody was more or less surprised.
Right. Yeah. No.
Yeah. It's almost like a tax ID number in government contracting. So yeah.
It's like a tax ID. But unlike the tax ID, like you said, it's the number comes from a private organization.
Right.
Yeah. So
and the new one will as well. But to me, it's like, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I think we have bigger problems in acquisition and contracting than the DUNS number. So
I agree. I think, there's enough. One of the things that you said earlier, there's enough content out there, right? So there's enough content about DUNS number that if they undo it, now all that content is no longer relevant.
Right. How many systems are going to be impacted by this?
Yes.
It's
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Okay, let's talk GSA Schedule. That's a very, very common, people ask me about it all the time, and I know absolutely nothing about GSA Schedule. I've never done it. I've never applied for one. I've never been looked at a GSA Schedule. So this is, you have the floor on this one. Totally.
Okay. Well, if you know nothing about it, then you probably don't have gray hair or any wrinkles like I do. But anyway, so GSA has done a heck of a job of marketing themselves, meaning that everybody and their brother thinks that you must have a GSA schedule to sell to the government. I wish I had the sound that they have on Family Feud when you guess an answer and it's wrong and the big red X comes up.
We'll insert it in.
Okay, excellent. You do not need a GSA schedule to sell to the government. Correct.
Okay, cool. Okay, gotcha. That's awesome.
And it is just that. It is only a marketing tool. It does not guarantee any sales. It actually comes with a sales quota. You need to bring in at least $25,000 per year through your schedule. And the best way to describe a GSA schedule is that it's a contract vehicle or a vendor shortlist. So very similar to going on to Amazon and typing in whatever it is you need to buy, whether it's dog food or shoes or a purse or luggage. You can go onto the GSA Advantage website and type in bulletproof vest, stapler, engineering services, systems engineers, whatever it is you're looking for. And all the vendors that have been vetted through GSA will magically appear along with their prices, which will be the lowest prices that they offer. And the government can then make purchases for these products and or services or software. whatever it is they're looking for. So it simplifies the acquisition. GSA schedules can be used by federal government, state, local, even the Red Cross, the United Nations, the World Bank, the IMF, IFC, and a lot of these quasi government entities. But the primary focus is that it is based on your lowest prices. So if you're selling widgets for $100, but you gave Joe Schmo a rate of $85, then your GSA rate's probably going to be close to that.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, and you're right. They've done an excellent job marketing themselves because everyone wants to get on a GSA schedule. And it's mentioned. You just mentioned that there's a minimum $25,000 spend requirement.
Correct, meaning that you've got to sell at least $25,000 through your schedules. Now, you may be selling whatever services, engineering services, professional services, management consulting, legal services, whatever. If let's say you've got a $5 million contract with the Army and you've got a $3 million contract with Department of Agriculture, but let's say neither of those contracts are through the GSA schedule. GSA could care less. Your contract for $25,000 and above need to be going through the schedule. Otherwise, they will cancel or revoke your schedule. So right now, you've got about 20,000 companies that hold a GSA schedule, and 60%, so more than half, 60%, have zero sales through their schedule.
Oh.
Again, why is that? Somebody sold them something they didn't need. They got it because GSA does a heck of a job marketing themselves. Build it and they will come doesn't always work. So again, same strategy as the 8A. Have a pipeline. Know who your customers are, how they purchase, how they prefer to purchase, what their contract vehicle preference is, and then pursue those certifications or vehicles based on your customer. Let the customer dictate what your strategy should be. And you can get all that information online.
Okay. Now let's assume that the company does have a valid reason, because they're listening to this and they're listening to Jennifer and I, and so they're smart and they're saying, okay, I've done all my homework, I've done my due diligence, and now there is a client that says, yes, that if I had a schedule, if I was on a GSA schedule, that I could service them better, right? Okay, great.
Right.
Now, is this something that I can realistically do myself?
Realistically do yourself as far as getting onto the schedule?
Yes, as far as getting onto the schedule.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. But most companies, I'll say, that try to do it are, you're busy with your daily operations. If you're the CEO and you've got, some contractors running around out there for you, some part-time people, you're probably managing them, you're putting out fires, you're trying to grow your business. Yes. You really should. I think a smart CEO knows when to outsource certain business functions, and this would be one that you probably want to. You certainly need to be involved every step of the way and make sure that the pricing and everything else is there, that you do have the pipeline and reasons that warrant getting onto the schedule. But it's like doing your taxes or changing your oil or I don't know, putting a new roof on your house. We could all probably do it. There's plenty of YouTube videos out there to show you how to do it, but it's probably smart that your time is more valuable elsewhere.
I like that. No, it's true. I hate taxes. I hate doing my taxes. So yeah, I agree. If you compare to taxes, I think that's an analogy. If you say taxes, everyone's probably
right.
Yeah,
right.
They're pulling up. What's some of the pitfalls that you've seen with companies when trying to do it on their own? Do you have any examples?
Yeah, they miss certain sections, they miss requirements. They think they submit something that's out of date, or they get on, and so they think that they're successful because they're on the schedule, but maybe they didn't negotiate their rates with GSA as well as they should have. So having a group like us that's been through it day in, day out, has the gray hair to show for it, and knows how to work with GSA so you're still going to be profitable because, again, the schedule is based on your lowest rates. And then once you get onto the schedule, your rates are then only a price ceiling, meaning that as you start bidding for work through your schedule, you're probably going to bid lower than your GSA rates. So suddenly your margins are very, very low. So it took me a couple times to pass economics in college, but I can tell you this: with low margins, you need heavy volume. So
Yes.
again, if you just have one or two customers in your pipeline for GSA, probably, again, let's do the Family Feud X here. You need a couple more than that to really hit that, and you don't want to be on just to make $25,000. You should be aiming a little bit higher than that, I would think.
No, I agree. That's so. Let's go back. You said, do you negotiate the rates? What do you mean by that for someone like myself who's a novice? So
Sure.
we present the rates, and what happens?
Yep. So you send in a proposal to GSA, and you say, here are the labor categories, or here are the list of the widgets that I want to sell. And so you disclose to GSA, our labor rate is $100 per hour for a, project manager, or it's $100 for this widget. But again, we've sold this widget for $85 to Joe Schmo. So GSA, we're going to offer you $84. And you can do some due diligence on the calc.gsa.gov site, CALC.
Mm-hmm.
Or you go onto GSA Advantage and type in the stapler or the widget that you're selling and do some comparison there to find out what is the average rate that the other companies that sell this service, this software, this product are selling it for. And so before you even send in your proposal, you kind of know what GSA is going to come back to in the negotiations. So in that example of the $100 and you offer GSA $84 because your lowest rate was $85, well, maybe everyone else on the schedule who's selling this widget or this labor category has a rate of $75. GSA will basically laugh you off the table and say, okay, your $84 is great because it's a little bit less than your lowest price, but everyone else is on here at $75, so there's no need for us to add you at a higher rate when, 700 other companies sell it at $74. And again, you need to be comparing apples and apples. So for labor categories, it's comparing the same education requirements, the same minimum years experience.
Yeah. Okay.
So do your homework before you go down the path versus getting on and being stuck in a box.
That's but again, like I said, I'm not knowledgeable GSA. Okay. So, and with 20,000 companies on there, there's probably all categories are covered.
Oh yeah, there's hundreds of companies in each category, right?
Oof.
So you want to make sure you're competitive again before you go down. And GSA, the benefit is it makes it easier for the government because your prices are negotiated upfront. So it does give you muscle, but you still need to have that pipeline. And you also need to know that there are contract vehicles within other agencies. So, Navy has Navy Seaport E, NASA STOOP, HCATS at HHS. And, every agency has a vehicle that you can get on. So again, do that homework up front. Who is your customer? What is the preferred acquisition method? Or, is 10% of these purchases are going through GSA, but everything else is going full and open competition, meaning that it's going to go out onto FedBiz Ops. If so, then don't spend money on GSA, spend money on a sales and business development person and perhaps a proposal writer.
Yeah. Nice. Now, I've seen people have talked about videos in terms of once you're on GSA schedule, what should you be doing? How should you be marketing yourself?
Right. To me, it's a backwards question. People will come to us and say, hey, we got onto the schedule. We did it ourselves. We're all excited of carrying the GSA flag. And
by the way, I'm smiling, just so you know. I'm smiling because I agree with you. But it's a question people ask me, and so I have to ask it to you, right?
Right. And so what's the politically correct way of saying, hey, we're supposed to do the sales and marketing up front before you get onto the schedule to warrant even going down the path? Because GSA actually, as a general rule, about 10 to 12% of federal government purchases go through the GSA schedule. It's pretty small.
Yeah.
I mean, it's billions of dollars, but that's a pretty small percentage.
Right.
So you really want to make sure that, again, that you've got a full pipeline and that you're targeting opportunities, not just general. The more specific you can be, the more effective I think you'll be, because it's such a complex market to sell into, and it's competitive. You can't think that the GSA schedule is Again, it's kind of like that, as I mentioned for the 8A, like a Hail Mary. People get it thinking it's going to be the greatest thing that's going to save their day. But there are some benefits with it. I mean, you can market to, these folks that once you're on the schedule, you start getting these GSA e-buy notifications, which those would be the RFPs and RFQs that come only to the GSA schedule holders. So it's a smaller pool of companies that you'll be competing with versus something, say, that's on FedBizOpps that everybody and their brother can go after.
Is that like Unison or FedBid? The GSA eBay? Remember FedBid just changed to Unison now?
FedBid, I believe, is reverse auction. So that's going to be property or services that the government has acquired that they are then selling back to the business community.
Okay, so then this is just like an RFP.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. This is RFPs just for the GSA schedule holders. So the only people that will get those are the GSA schedule holders. So again, a smaller pool of companies that you compete with, but again, you still want to make sure that you've got some customers that are going to be buying through that vehicle.
Okay. Is there a different way of approaching agencies when you're on the schedule versus companies that do not have a contract vehicle?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly important to highlight. We always, I can't reiterate enough, lead with your capabilities. People really want to know what you do and do well. Saying that you're on GSA schedule or 8A certified or HubZone just shows that, you know how you either hired somebody to help you fill out a lot of this complex paperwork, you meet some of the basic requirements.
Right.
But your real value is relationships and your capabilities. Okay. So yes, once you get a GSA schedule, it's to me almost as good as having a library card, which means that basically nothing. The real value of the schedule or something to tout about is once you've got the schedule and you've got contracts running through it. But once you have it, certainly put the logo, the GSA logo, as you are allowed to do, on the back of your business card, on your website with a link to your GSA Advantage price list, on all of your marketing collateral, on your capabilities statements. And you certainly want to mention it as you were talking to potential partners, to the government directly. You want to take advantage of the resources that GSA has available for you. If you are a small business, then look at the other GSA vendors within the same schedule and special item number as you. Particularly the ones that are listed as O. O means other, and other means large. Large means they need to parse out about 36% of their business to small businesses. And you're going to be more attractive if you are also on the GSA schedule.
Do you have, for example, some sort of intake form for companies to determine if, obviously, about them being ready for GSA schedule, if someone wanted to come to you? Do you have that at your organization? You do? Okay.
We do.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. And I'm glad you asked that question because we do have one of our presentations on GSA schedules. We say, just because you meet the requirements is not a green light to proceed. Just because you're tall enough to ride the roller coaster doesn't mean that you should ride the roller coaster.
Okay. So make sure you send us a link so we can include that in the show notes with this.
Okay.
And then I can refer people to that.
Okay.
So what are some of the other resources that's helped you further your knowledge in terms of federal government contracting? Software, tools, training, organizations to join?
Yep, I would say people. It's relationships, talking to customers, what works for them in the sales process, what's worked for them in contract vehicles. But absolutely, yes, organizations, chambers of commerce, especially here in the local DC area. Obviously most people here either work for the government or they're selling to the government, or they're at least, one degree of separation away from it. But yeah, there's plenty of government contracting associations, whether it's related to HubZones, 8A, women-owned companies, veteran-owned businesses, or defense-related. So absolutely, there's a lot of resources.
Anything specific? Any names of like software that you've used or that you work with? I know that you mentioned like calc.gsa.gov. Any other software that you've used, recommended tools?
So
specifically?
the Calc site is really a GSA site. It's not software. It's just public data that anybody and their brother can go onto. Same as FPDS and USA Spending. But most departments will have a newsletter that you can sign up for, or navigate over to the OSDBU's page, and we have a list of all of those on our website. And you can sign up for alerts for those. We get obviously emails almost every day from GSA, sometimes multiple, since that's really our sweet spot.
No, feel free to give out the name of your website. Spell it out for them.
Sure. It's JenniferSchaus.com, JenniferSchaus.com. But publications out there, Government Executive, NextGov, Defense News, the lists go on and on and on, and podcasts and other webinars. And, we've got colleagues that have written books on government contracting. Dr. Google is also always a big help as well if you can't find something.
Yeah, no, definitely. A couple of things before we go. What is one of the biggest mistakes that you've seen contractors make, or what's some of the common characteristics that you notice in successful contractors?
Sure. So I think the biggest mistake is, and I'm going to kind of revert back to one of the points we discussed about, what should companies ask the program manager or whoever it is they're talking to within the government. And I feel like too many companies make the mistake of asking questions that they should have walked in knowing. So I feel like the successful contractors have spent the time, done the homework up front, done the research to say, okay, I see in your acquisition forecast you're getting ready to purchase $2,037.67 worth of IT products and services happening third quarter of 2020. And the incumbent is XYZ company. So going in with specific information and targeting specific opportunities versus just being reactive to Fed Biz Ops, I think is just a best practice, being proactive. And that just takes some time up front, which will then make you more effective and efficient as time goes on.
Right. Nice. Yeah. And obviously, when we talked about tools and resources, you have lots of very smart people teaching webinars, and it's all public information on the YouTube channel. In terms of your webinar Wednesday series on YouTube at JenniferSchaus.com. I've noticed that, I looked through some of your videos before we got started. Bid protest, effective bid pipeline management, 8 tips for marketing the federal government, creating profitable pricing for government contracts. So you have you have 200 plus videos on YouTube now?
200 plus videos, yes. And then we have basically a blog that maps back to each video. So if you're more of a reader, then you can go to the blog on our website, and they will link to some of to most of the webinars. Okay. So that way we get the visual learners as well as those that just like to read.
Okay.
A ton of content. And like you said, we cover everything pretty much A to Z and everything in between.
Okay, nice. Any final words of encouragement for our small businesses out there?
Yeah, I would say just keep on keeping on. It takes grit. What's going to separate, or what's the real differentiator between, 75 companies that all provide management consulting services, and let's say all 75 are women-owned and 8A, and they're all in a hub zone, and everyone sends in the same price for the same RFP that's out there. Oof. The differentiator comes down to the relationships that you have with the buyers, with the influencers, with the end users, with the decision makers, and there's not just one or two. You really need to be in there networking, going to the conferences where the government people are speaking, where maybe a prime contractor is potentially influencing the purchase. So my words of encouragement, it's morning, noon, and night. It's 7 days a week. It's grit, really, and relationships that make the difference. Because when companies say, "Oh, we don't have any competition," it's comical, because someone out there in some way, shape, or form is doing something similar or the same. The difference is really the relationships, that personal piece.
Wow. Jennifer Schaus, thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric. It was a great pleasure to be with you and your audience. And I wish everyone the best of luck and success in their government contracting aspirations.
No, thank you.
Aim high.
No, yeah, great. Excellent. And we will, as always, have all the links to everything that we discuss, the resources on our page, on our podcast, and the show notes included as well. So with that, thank you everyone for listening today. And that was Jennifer Schaus. First and foremost, I want to thank Jennifer for being on the show. She understands the power of networking. One of the things that we encourage here at GovCon Giants is for people to get the information they need to make the best decisions for their business regardless of where the information comes from. Please use Jennifer as another resource in your toolbox to have when dealing with questions and scenarios in the government space. And also make sure to catch her weekly Wednesday webinar series discussing all things federal contracting each week at her very own YouTube channel, Jennifer Schaus Government Contracting. Each week, she features attorneys and other experts who discuss a wide range of topics. For example, in December, she discusses OTA, Small Innovators Route to Government Business, OTA, How to Reach the Tech Scouts, Debriefs, Why and How, HubZone, Special Advantages, Proposal Cost Volume, Best Practices, Proposal Cost Volume, Common Pitfalls. Interesting enough, when people tell me they don't know where to turn for information about specific issues regarding government contracting, I know they have not been looking long and hard enough, because today's guest has the most relevant recent content online regarding government contracting. For all the show notes to today's episode and more, visit us over at govcongiants.com/podcast.